Chapter 6. The Labyrinth. There is a legend among the rabbits. It is a very old legend that has been passed on for many generations from rabbit parents to the rabbit children. Every rabbit knows this legend. This is the legend of the labyrinth of Princess Saladia. Once upon a time, there was a small rabbit princess. Her name was Saladia. Her father was the powerful King Ronkus V. He was the unlimited ruler of all rabbits in the land. Saladia loved her father very much, but he hardly cared for his beautiful daughter. The only goal in life for King Ronkus V was to hoard food supplies, carrots, dandelion, fine herbs, and delicious salad. As the king was so keen on food, it seems only logical that he had named his only daughter Saladia, right? Saladia was a very unhappy rabbit girl because nobody of the royal household had time to care for her, let alone to play with the little princess. All the rabbits were constantly busy to replenish the stocks of food in the silo chambers of King Ronkus's palace. It was not only the case that the king himself was a very strong eater who devoured big heaps of the most delicious food every day. Apart from that, there was not a single week that passed by when not at least 3 big receptions for noble emissaries of remote rabbit tribes were being held, and of course, during those receptions, the finest of food was served incessantly. And that's why Princess Saladia was in the gigantic palace of her father, surrounded by hundreds of rabbits, but she nevertheless was the loneliest creature in the whole world. She used the time that she had on her paws to explore the gargantuan royal palace to the last crevice and niche. And that's how it came that one day, while strolling around in an old and remote vault, Saladia found a door, old and covered in cobwebs. A door she had never seen before. An old servant told her that behind this door there was an enormous amount of corridors, chambers, rooms, and vast halls. This, he said, had been the treasure vaults of the rabbits, and every single one of the chambers had been filled with gold and silver, brilliant gems, shining pearls, and radiant jewels. And the glitter of these treasures had filled all the rooms, and also the hearts of all the rabbits who went in there and came out again, because the treasure vaults, so the old servant emphasized, had been open all time, and for every single denizen and subject of the realm. Many rabbits came from all the parts of the country, and they rejoiced in the view that all the riches offered, and they also contributed to multiply them, because whenever a rabbit found something precious, it brought this small treasure here to add it to the many other beautiful things in the vaults, and, by doing so, to share it with all the other rabbits. But 5 generations ago, the people of the rabbit had gotten a king who was to bring about the end of the gigantic treasure of the rabbits. This rabbit was Ronkus I, who was Saladia's great-great-grandfather. Ronkus I was an incredibly hungry rabbit. From his childhood on, he was basically doing nothing else but to eat. And as a grown-up, he finally was so fat that he was not able to leave his throne anymore, and he had to be taken care of and supplied with everything he needed all day long. Saladia's great-great-grandfather was actually the first rabbit who began to buy food from others. He had his subjects collect food all the livelong day and then gave them in return a small nugget of gold, a few crumbs of silver, a ruby, an emerald, a topaz, basically what the other rabbit wanted to have in exchange for the food it had brought. This procedure was continued by Ronkus I's royal descendants, who inherited the king's insatiable craving and hunger. And so, as time went on, the chambers and halls emptied, and the treasure of the rabbits, that had seemed to be inexhaustible, was used up to the very last bit. Nowadays, the old servant closed his tale, there were only a few spiders and their webs to be found in those vaults. Princess Saladia was deeply saddened by this story. She started to cry when she suddenly thought of her father who, exactly like his forebears, had only thoughts for the searching and finding of food and had time for nothing and no one else in the world. When the servant had left, Saladia tried to pry open the old weather-beaten door. She wanted to explore those vaults. She wanted to see how gigantic they were, and she wanted to try to imagine how this gargantuan, beautiful treasure may have looked like, the treasure that had been collected and put together over generations by innumerable rabbits. She had to struggle quite a bit because the door was huge for a rabbit, and it also hadn't been opened for many a year. But finally, Saladia managed to break the resistance of the old hinges, and through a small gap she slipped past the door. Behind it there was pitch-dark night. But Saladia had excellent eyes, and so she ventured fearlessly into the first corridor that lay behind the door. The vaults were exactly like the old servant had described them. Saladia was wandering around numerous ducts, rooms, chambers, and halls. There was nothing to be found here except for dust and spider webs. The incredible emptiness of this treasury increased Saladia's grief and sadness a lot. She thought of all the amazing treasures that had been contained here so long ago, and that now had vanished for all of eternity without leaving the slightest trace behind. But what was that? Up there, in one of the cobwebs, Saladia saw something that sparkled. She hobbled closer by, and then she recognized what it was up there. A ring, a small golden ring, set with a ruby that was encircled by small white diamonds, like a red sun with small stars around it in a circle. So there did remain something after all, Saladia thought delightedly. She got ready to take the ring with her, but then she let go of this idea. Maybe, she whispered, maybe someday someone will come here and will find you. A soft draught moved the ring in his cobweb bed and made it dangle, and it almost looked like it was nodding and approving of Saladia's thought. And all of a sudden, Saladia felt a song emerging from her heart. She opened her mouth and started to sing in a soft tone. Her voice, that was as stunningly beautiful as her black eyes, was molding this song that had no words, and that all the more so was telling the story of this vault of treasures. The song was beautiful and sad beyond description. The melody floated upwards delicately and sounded through the vaults, reflected by the walls and carried on by the echoes in every crevice and niche and gap of the seemingly infinite labyrinth. Then Saladia was no longer able to hear the sound. She turned around and left the vaults. Since then, they say, nobody has ever been in there again. Times have changed, and the palace of the royal family was abandoned. No one knows anymore where the palace had been located in the first place. But there has been many a rabbit who have tried to find the labyrinth where, once upon a time, the treasure of the rabbits has been contained. The legend of the labyrinth of Princess Saladia is well known, and it is said that her song still lingers on within the labyrinth, reflected by the walls for ever and ever, and wandering through the corridors and halls. But it is also said that no one who ventures to search for the labyrinth will ever find it. Only someone whose heart is as clouded from sadness and stricken with grief like the heart of the rabbit princess will be able to hear Saladia's song and then discover